Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Facebook Live. It is the 19th of January, year 2022. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, staying warm. We are having like weird weather here in Dallas. Sometimes there are a couple of days that it's 70-degree weather, and then a couple of days that is 20-degree weather. And I have no idea whether to wear summer clothes or winter clothes. I don't think I've put away my summer clothes. So, but the grace in that is I have been able to go outside for a walk and not be uncomfortable. If not, you have to bundle up if you go in 30-degree weather for a walk. So welcoming everyone. And some of our normal panel members are here. We have April. I'm going to introduce them real quick. April is back. Welcome, April. April is a psychic. She has quite a few modalities of healing and is a spiritual teacher. Good evening, April. And then Kelly and Kelly, his partner, are back as well. Both of them are Qigong teachers as well as spiritual teachers. Good evening, Kelly. I see Caesar joining, so he should be appearing shortly. Caesar is a channel and a spiritual teacher as well. And then Eileen, who keeps us very streamlined, is a mindfulness instructor. She's done her mindfulness certifications last year, so please feel free to sign up for her meditations. She does post on our Facebook group for meditations. And then we have Michelle, who's joined us as a fellow member. Good evening, Michelle. And Ken has joined us as well. He has been on the panel for the past few months with us, as well as Patricia. And today we have a new member, which is Marla, is the part of our core group of meditators for the past 2 years. Marla, is that correct? And she has joined us as well. So let me look at this is a question that April, I'll get started with you. You need a welcome question, right? Deborah actually posted on the Facebook, when I posted the Facebook Live Q&A thing, Deborah posted this, and I thought it was a perfect question for April. And this is, why is it there is always something testing us? Do we always have to be tested, or is it more to learn?
That's a perfect question for me.
Since you always talk about testing.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. It also is a matter of, basically the answer is yes, but as you go on this path, the testing, as we're calling it, becomes less testing. It becomes less of a challenge. You don't, I think when we're younger and we're just learning about this path and we're not so sure and we're figuring everything out, and the things that we go through in life, they kind of jump to the why me category more and faster, and they're harder to deal with. But once you're on this path and then you really start evolving on this path, you learn to start accepting the things that happen in your life, the challenges that happen, and you learn to definitely not necessarily take them personally or as personally. You learn to recover faster. So, but here, to answer the question, here you will always have some sort of challenge, because that's why you're here. That is one of the reasons we're here, is to grow, is to learn, is to evolve, is to experience. And one of the things is you can't actually know something until you experience it. You know, you can assume, you can think, you can empathize, you can sympathize, you can have compassion, but you literally just can't understand something until you actually experience it. So that's what a lot of these challenges in life are for. That's why we have a lot of them. I'm sure that, you know, Eckhart has challenges still in his life, but he deals with them differently. So when he gets to the airport and it's crowded or he's going to be late, he no longer gets upset, thinks it's sad, thinks he has bad luck. He accepts, okay, I'm going to be late. And now what? So that's the key, is learning how to cope with them in a different way, and learning that they're not necessarily against you. Right?
Beautiful. Thank you, April. To this, I would say I used to travel for my work in 2003, 2000, I think 2004, 5, 2006. And one trip, I went from Dallas to Modesto, California. And the way you go to Modesto is you fly into San Francisco and, excuse me, and take one of those puddle jumpers to Modesto, right? So on the way back, and this goes back to the flight thing. So on the way back, I don't know why they canceled the flight back, and we travel for work. So we need to be back at work again the next day, right? So we say, okay, we're going to rent a car. You're not going to fly. We're going to rent a car and go to San Francisco on a car and still meet our flight. And it so happens that we get into the worst, I don't know why traffic got backed up on that interstate. It took us like maybe 3-4 hours, which maybe it takes a couple of hours to go from Modesto to San Francisco. That day, it took us 4 or 5 hours to go to San Francisco. I just remember eating at a cheesecake factory, so we couldn't make our flight anyway. So things of that nature, call it testing, or it is what it is, right? Then you change your plan, you picked up the phone, you called the rental car company and said, now I cannot fly, so can I rent a car? I think the same thing happened was it in 2009 or 10 that in Europe, they had that volcanic ash and all flights got canceled, if anybody remembers it. And people had to come to Eckhart's events, like on trains and buses, like all the neighboring countries, they were able to take trains and buses, and some of them surrendered to it. So thank you, April, for that example. Caesar, did you want to speak to this? And the question is in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just always seem like testing us. I think that's a matter of perspective. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I liked what April said. Makes very good sense. But as far as considering things tests, you know, again, I think it's a matter of perspective. Things are going to happen that, you know, we can't see coming, that may be a little uncomfortable at times. And, you know, I suppose you can label it a test, or kind of like to use it as like a guidance system, so to speak. You know, the things that happen, you know, effortlessly, if it's a matter of, you know, accomplishing something and something, you know, appears as a roadblock or a speed bump, you know, you simply really got to surrender to, like you said, the isness of it and change course accordingly, you know, to go with the flow. It is what it is. I do feel, however, that when things of that nature happen, that it is important to learn something from it, even though it might be very minute. You know, it may not seem like no big deal. A lesson is a lesson. And so when you can extract that from, you know, a test, then you can obviously move on to the next lesson, because we all know that if you don't learn the lesson that life's trying to teach you, it will again offer them same lessons, just in various situations, you know, along the way. So a matter of perspective.
Thank you, Caesar. Kelly and Kelly, do you all have any perspective on this? Thank you.
How many cents do you want to throw at this?
You start.
A few quarters, a few quarters.
A few quarters. Here's some change. Everything is about learning and refinement. Looking at things as tests. Again, I agree with what April and Caesar have said. However, my personal perspective is that we are used to using certain words to define and frame our reality. And this is a reflection of our habits of ego attachment. So viewing everything as a test, and think back to all the tests that you've done in school growing up and how much you love those, right? So think of that feeling and think of this question. And now reframe the concept of this question. Why are we always learning? That's the main focus of this question. Why are we always learning? Because that is the whole point of us being here. We are here to learn how to embody our divine aspects. We are here to learn how to embody our presence in our heart, how to connect all of that and embody all of that in our physical reality. When we see more of our ego attachment, our shadows and our egos will fight, kicking and screaming to keep us in that perception of conflict. When something happens, it happens. How we view it and perceive it depends on how aware we are of our mind and how present we are with ourselves and emotionally responsible with ourselves, and whether or not we spin out into drama or whether or not we hold our space and stay aligned with our heart and stay emotionally responsible by not judging and not rejecting what is happening in our environment, in our lives, or what another person's interaction with us actually is. We have lots of tests until they stop being tests, until we just understand that it is just our mind telling us that they are tests when they are actually moments of refinement that we have brought to ourselves so that we can perceive beyond our current limited perception of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why being present with ourselves, understanding our emotional responsibility and how to feel present in our bodies, in our hearts, not just our minds, not just a thought process, is really, really important, because that allows us to feel the contrast between judging and rejecting something, or actually being present and allowing something to pass through us and on its own journey, and not become ego attached or judging of that event, that experience, that feeling, that moment, because that's what it is a moment. And our egos love to get us hooked into over-analysis, overthinking, over-feeling, over-judging, over everything, so that we can't stop, so that we don't stop, so that we don't understand how we can actually calm ourselves, relax ourselves, and sink into our present moment and physically feel the difference between those spaces of mental projection, of rejection and ego attachment, versus that emotional space of clarity and understanding and being emotionally present and in our bodies, and not literally outside of ourselves in the drama. And that's I'll just leave it there, because
That's good. That's good. As everybody's talking, I remember a personal story about this, when a spiritual teacher that I was working with actually asked me that question one time in a session with her. And I can remember her asking me this, and I burst into tears, because my ego had
this idea that being tested meant that you were being judged, because I was a competitive gymnast. So back then I could be very hard on myself. So I was always like trying to be perfect or trying to be something for somebody or what. And I can remember bursting into tears when I laugh about it now. It wasn't funny at the time, but I remember bursting into tears when she asked me that question, because I thought, I don't want to be tested. I don't want to be judged, because I didn't really understand then that really I was the one then doing the judging, and that, oh no, I'm being tested as if this was like a bad thing, that it was a pass or fail or something like that. And so her question was really triggering to help me to see, and like Caesar said, it's a matter of perspective, that in that moment when she asked me that, I was like, no, I don't want to be tested. Why do I have to be tested some more? I'm here to
After it's like,
I want to
did
feel
I leave that
better.
behind in school? It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then once we talked about it then, and then it became, well, look at it from a perspective that, you're being initiated. You can always use different words. It doesn't have to be that you're tested or whatever, but it was just that perspective that, you're just going to experience these things because you have to learn, but also because you have things you're holding on to that are hurting you. Well, personally for me, so I'm hurting myself by holding on to them. So I'm going to be tested and triggered to see, what am I holding on to? What am I willing to let go of? So that was kind of fun to think of that story. that was a long time ago, but I'm like,
when you first start asking yourself those questions, it can be super triggering. When you first start having those conversations, either with someone else or yourself, it's just like, wait a minute, what? It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's like, I know for myself, when I was younger and I first started asking these questions, like, I would absolutely, I did exactly the same thing. It's like, I'm a good person. What are you talking about? I'm spiritual and all this, and I'm not being tested. I'm doing good, So
and being comfortable too with having someone else realize that you have things to let go of, and they're not judging you for it.
Yeah.
Right. That the person who's really judging you is you. Sometimes
that's sort of like the primary theme of a lot of our conversations.
It is.
It's sort of like, wait, no, just hear me out, just listen, just okay, all right.
Yeah. And it can be hard to hear that. I know sometimes we've talked about that before. But
practice. All about practice and refinement. Fun stuff.
Beautiful. Art school. Thank you, Kelly and Kelly. Eileen, did you want to say something about this? We got Kelly and Kelly's perspective as well.
Yeah. Actually, like everything that was shared by everyone so far, resonated with all of it. But I definitely, as I was listening to Kelly and Kelly, both of them were kind of saying things that were kind of like on the tip of my tongue. So just as it is. I was just going to say that, like, what is meant to be will be. So I don't think it's so much that we're always have to be tested. Those are kind of some strong words, always have to be. But I think that everything comes to our reality, like Kelly said, everything comes into our reality either to bring us joy or unconditional love, or an experience that we can test, an experience that we can grow from, which again then is kind of getting us to a place of growth and opportunity, which should also bring joy. And so I think that in the moment sometimes it might not seem that way, but I think it's all required. It's all part of the process. I don't think it's like a 24-hour a day thing that we're always being tested, but it will continue to come in order for our growth. Our issue though is, and I think Kelly brought this up, our issue though is that we judge. And so, it's human nature, but that judgment of judging ourselves for, having to go through this, because I know I used to do that. I'm seriously having this experience again. Like, why is this happening to me again? Didn't I learn from it the last time? So it's happening. And we just have to meet that as much as we possibly can with gratitude that it's come up, because then we have the opportunity to learn it again. And maybe it'll stick this time.
Beautiful. You always bring up gratitude, Eileen. You should wear a t-shirt called
I
gratitude.
do.
You do?
I have a couple of them.
Thank
A
you.
sweatshirt and a couple of t-shirts. Yes. I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
for all that is.
But even that requires a high degree of presence, right? To say, I am grateful for this experience
Absolutely.
and
Every
move into a
single-
state of acceptance. Thank you.
And the space between when I have that gratitude and the moment gets smaller and smaller. And so initially it might take me a few hours, or before it would have taken me days, but now it's like, it doesn't even take me a few hours. Now I can see gratitude for the opportunity and growth much faster. Gets shorter and shorter.
Beautiful. And since we came to you, I got reminded of the conversation that we were having before the Facebook Live happened. April was bringing up the fact, does Eckhart not experience challenges? And Eileen was talking about, for the past 2 years, her Boston talk has been postponed, right? Because of the pandemic. It was supposed to be in 2020. I think Lakshmi is the same way. They are in San Francisco or something, the Bay Area. I think Oakland is in March. It was supposed to be in January, now it's in March. Nada is the same way. She was going to go attend the Toronto one, and that keeps getting postponed. So just imagine whatever Eckhart's revenue for the year is, for the past 2 years, he's not been able to make his revenue, right? Like say, if he makes $50 million a year, I'm sure all the live events were canceled. So, and any travel internationally was canceled. So any of the retreats that are high paying workshops for him, where people pay $3,000, $4,000 for that retreat, those were canceled, right? So how much of surrender that whole Sanskrit team and Eckhart would have gone through. Like, even if they say, okay, 2020 is gone, this is 2021, now I can make money. You couldn't. And now 2022 arrived. And again, these events are getting postponed. But they have published the events for Phoenix. Actually, Leah, one of our, you remember Leah, Eileen? Leah is going to the Phoenix one, since we were talking about the Phoenix location, or Arizona as a location. So thank you, Eileen. Michelle, did you want to say something about this topic? Or anything else that you want to talk about?
I don't think there's much more to add. Everybody spoke so eloquently that I just enjoyed listening, but yeah, I think I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Michelle. Ken, did you want to say something about this? I'm sure you have something.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I love the responses from everybody. It's amazing how everybody can talk about the same subject, but just have their version and words and what they use. And for myself, I used to have these questions, why am I here? What's life all about? What's the purpose? What's the deep meaning? And I feel that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And now I feel that I had to go through everything that I went through and to get me to where I am. And that is the transformation. And that is my answer why I went through everything I went through and why I had to go through everything. And I had to realize that I had to get out of my mind energy, my thinking, and realize that that's the unconscious way of trying to deal with life. And now understanding that the way that I'm dealing with life is living in presence. And the challenges that occur, the uncomfortability that occur, and I'm going to be like Eileen, when any of this comes, gratitude. I am so thankful for getting triggered. And sometimes it's still not comfortable, but when I start to come out of it, I start to be so thankful, and I can actually start shifting my energy. And that's being in the presence. So I'm starting to really understand that there's so many different ways of communicating in our body and our emotions, and we have different energy centers. And when I can be in that stillness, in that creative understanding, that's when the shifts start coming in and answers start coming in, the downloading of information. And what I was thinking about or what experiences I'm going through, I love it. All I got to do is say, help me understand. It's a form of surrender. And people, places, and things, I just stop paying attention to the messages, and they're all around me. They come through all the five senses. And it's magical. I'm just really grateful that I can be in this place of stillness. And it's amazing, even when everybody started talking, I got real nervous because there's so many people on the panel tonight. And I started thinking, I think I should have an excuse and leave. I started to sweat, and I went, it's okay. You're not alone. So there's a part of me saying, I got your back. We're going to get through this. Just start talking, but just don't leave. You've done that long enough. So just very, very thankful. Thank you.
So this implies Ken, I love the fact that Ken is so vulnerable and so courageous about his innermost feelings. So that is a pattern, right?
Yes.
You were on Earth School to learn this pattern that
Absolutely.
you run away. But the going gets hot, you run away.
Oh, yes. Oh, I run real fast. All right, climb a tree. But
Fantastic.
so no more. I gotta say, no more running.
And this is a perfect example of how presence power helps us. Yeah, we may have reactivity, but then the presence goes, no, sit in that chair. It's okay for these many people to be around. Sit, right? While the ego is saying, getting identified with the conditioned pattern and want to just give into the reaction and get up and go.
Yes. And
Right.
another huge piece is I'm really loving those different parts of me. I'm calling them my shadow. And I realize that the presence power is unconditional love. So I am really in sync or in alignment to that energy field. And I can actually feel it in my life today, and knowing I'm being held. And that's the beauty of being in this group, where I feel like we're all there. And it's like, I've never felt the intensity of this energy as much as this group. And there's a lot of groups that I go to. It's what we put out, we're getting back, law of attraction. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Marla, our newest panel member, did you want to say something about this topic?
Well, I guess first thing I would say to Ken is the more the merrier, huh, Ken? The more the merrier.
Yes.
Yeah, when I heard this question, being a retired college instructor, hearing a question about tests, of course, triggers a lot of ideas. And the whole concept of tests is, if you think of it as an evaluation, am I good enough? Have I passed? Did I get it? Am I good enough? If you think about it that way, I can see where that would cause a lot of pain. And so, and I have thought about it that way. And even my own spiritual growth, I have thought about that way. And remember a time when I felt like I was taking a final exam, not a final exam. I mean, I wasn't dying or anything, but I took a huge test. It was a whole week of experiences that I knew were going to test whether I could stay present and enjoy the situation. And I passed with flying colors. At least I gave myself the passing test, the passing grade. And then we got home and we had a break in our water line to the house that my daughter's family and I share in a duplex sort of situation. And we were without water for 2 weeks. And I did okay with that too. Okay, I did okay. I'm always doing that to myself. Am I doing it okay? Am I getting it? And I'm thinking I'm going along just great. And I think I'm just, clicking right along. I'm getting it. I'm feeling peaceful. And I had been just coping with the situation fine. And I woke up from a nap one afternoon to a pop quiz. Okay, if you want to use that analogy of tests, I had a pop quiz. And I had just wakened from a nap to get a group text from my daughter saying, they're coming back to repair the pipes this afternoon. And I need to know if either of my 2 grandchildren, she gave, Angelo and Adriana, would one of you be here to check the work and pay the man? And oh my gosh, there was the quiz right there. And the trigger hit me like that. And it was like, I had the phone in my hand. So I texted real quick. I went, geez, my eyes work. I'm here. And what's going on? And that reaction of mine, I did not even recognize as inappropriate until I walked next door because I thought they were here or something. I walked next door and I walk in and my daughter says, well, I was just checking to make sure that one of them could be here because they've been with us when we have been working on the problem and they know what the situation is and what it should look like. And I went, oh, failed that pop quiz. It's like, I got triggered. And because I didn't do what Kelly said, which is, and I know this and I've practiced it, but I didn't in the moment. What I did not do was take a minute to take a breath, sit down in my presence, take a breath, and sit in it and be present. And just realize all she was doing was asking for one of them. She was not leaving me out, which is what I felt. Immediately I'm being left out. And why am I not being considered here? And wow, that was a learning experience that I think relates to what's going on here. And because of that particular experience, I have come to welcome, as Ken has said, I've come to welcome the triggers. And I come to sort of look forward to them. It's like, I wonder what's going to happen today. How am I going to get triggered today? Okay, let's get present. Okay, come on, bring it on. So that's my contribution.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marla, for that example. Perfect practical example, right?
Mhm.
And can I say something on that topic for a moment? When you're finished?
Most definitely. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say on the topic of, because she was describing like an experience with like a text message or group chat message or whatever. I think I've mentioned this previously in some of our live talks, that I started using the strategy with emails and text messages, like things that, you know, I could read and the person's not with me at the moment. I started putting them aside. Like if it's an email and I know it's from somebody important, I'll like pin it, but I won't read it. If somebody sends me a text message, I might read it, but if I feel a certain way, unless it's like a celebration of some sort, if I feel any type of resistance coming up, I put my phone away. So I'm like, now is not the time to reread that or to respond to that. And so I oftentimes will just put whatever it is away, email, text messages, and then come back to it after a while and not respond, but come back to it and then reread it from my new lens. And then respond if I feel like that's needed, which sometimes it's not. But I think people, especially nowadays, like they need strategies that they can use in the moment.
Can I say one more thing about that? I think the reason, I'm very self-reflective, and I thought, how come it caught me like that? And I think it caught me like that because I had just awakened from a nap and my energy was very, very low. Had that happened in the middle of the day, you know, I would have probably crinkled my forehead and gone over and asked what was going on, and not had that emotional reaction. But boy, that trigger was, it just caught me like that, unawares. So it's keeping the energy high and trying to stay present. That is the trick, that's for sure.
I had something that I just came up for me. Yeah. So I think a lot of our triggers has to do with relationship and communication, right? And now today, in all of the social media, right, we're texting shorthand and there is no facial expression. There's no intonation of voice. So sometimes when we're not present when we're texting and we just need to respond, it can be perceived on the other end as cut and dry, and people are reading into this with no context because, and I mean I try when I communicate that way, whether it's an emoji or just a way to be a little bit more elaborate, I guess, in my response, because I don't want to be perceived in a way that was not intended. So I think nowadays, because so much communication is done through messaging, it's a double-edged sword. So I mean, sometimes we're reading into things as the receiver of a message that wasn't even intended, and we're like making the drama up in our mind, and it wasn't even there. You know, like we're just making up stories, right? And then getting caught up in it and kind of like imagining it all. So we're creating our own drama, and so we're testing ourselves, right? So I think a lot of self-reflection on how we respond to things like that, you know. So I was
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
What came up for me was a conditioned pattern, a limiting belief around, you know, Eckhart has this thing where he says, if you were abandoned as a child, that even if, I think in The Power of Now or New Art, one of those books, he gives the example, if you were abandoned as a child, then even if somebody showed up late, right? A few minutes late, like you were to meet them for dinner and they showed up late, then that abandonment will come through, right? So the trigger that you saw in that message, Marla, is not so much that they said, the interpretation, right? The narrative that we added. And that's what we did a couple of weeks back, is what is the narrative that we are applying? We are not looking at the isness, narrowing it down to the isness of the present moment. And those are the lessons, right? Thank you. Beautiful example. Incredible. Thank you for that example, Marla. Ken and Marla hit it out of the park with their examples, practical examples. And so, like, I use Eileen's principle as well, Michelle. Like if a text message comes, right, and I don't have the time to give it presence, then I won't respond. And some people don't, and I have my messaging on a screen. Like when I pick up my phone to do Facebook, it's not on the same screen as, like I moved it to another screen. So I almost have to make a conscious effort to scroll and get to text messaging and see the message. I don't respond. I took Eckhart's philosophy. You know, during School of Awakening, he said, turn off your push notifications, turn off all your noises that distract you, right? So in 2019, when he said that, I just turned everything off and I go to that message when I'm ready to look at it. Same thing with Messenger, Facebook Messenger. I don't have any of the banner. All those notifications are taken off. I have to go there and look at it to actually read it. Because the world impinges on us. They have reels, they have shorts, they have TikTok. I mean, so many distractions. Social media has created, like you were saying, Michelle, created so many distractions.
And it could be overwhelming sensory wise. I mean, I just started doing something on Insight Timer in a group that I enjoyed, and I didn't realize I put the notifications and all the chat, and I'm like, oh no, this is like too much. It's like, when I'm ready to join in, I'll join in, and then you pop in and out, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I'm the same way. I take off the notification. I just too much to process at once, you know? And then you're like, you feel like you're drawn into it and you don't need to be. And so it's better not to have it, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Patricia, did you want to say something about this topic?
Yes, please. And thank you so much, everyone. I enjoyed everyone's answer so much. What came up for me is that I can approach answering it from within the question itself and try to break it apart, right? Each word in the way the sentence is, the question is being put together, tells us, almost like what state of journey the person that asks the question is. So let's say even the first word, why. I love what Caesar many times said in previous Q&As, that you come to the point in your spiritual journey that why doesn't matter anymore. So if we still ask why, it means that where we are, like it's indication for the person asking the question that I still need to know, and it's not really about knowing, right? It's about accepting. Once you actually accept and surrender to the present moment, this question will not come up. So the fact that the question is coming up the way it's coming up, it's just indication, right, where we are on our spiritual journey. And then it is always. So why there's always, right? Always. Is that really always? What does it mean? Every single moment something is testing us? Is it true, right? It's not really always. We have moments of peace. So now the question is, do we have more of those moments of peace, which means that we got it? Or there's constant, which is always, which means that we really need to step back and take a breath, conscious breath, and really reconnect. Because once we are aligned, I think, with the source, some of the questions really disappear. Like by itself, there's no more questions. It's just pure being. Then the second thing, the testing. If we just exchange the word testing with blessing, maybe it's just there's always something blessing us with what happens. And if we accept that, that it's a blessing, everything is a blessing. The blessing in disguise, sometimes, it's been disguised, it's been put that every challenge, everything is a blessing in disguise. And then, of course, the question, what's that something? What's that something that's challenging us, that testing us? So is that our lack of, we're not aligned? What is that something, right? So I was wondering if any of you have an answer, like thinking about that question. What would be that something that's testing us? If we are looking at it at that perspective, what is it? Well, is it God? Is it the universe? Is it our own mind? If we're testing ourselves, maybe by I don't know. So for me, like I said, I was trying to look at this question as being an answer in itself, an indication what the person answering the question really, where they are on their spiritual path. Thank you.
What is testing us is, as Eckhart says, life gives us experiences that are most helpful in the evolution of our consciousness. So it's the evolutionary impulse, and we will talk about Meister Eckhart in the next 3 weeks from now. We'll talk about Meister Eckhart, where he talks about this, that is the evolutionary impulse, that we get to the nothingness, dwelling in the unknown, be comfortable in our chair all by ourselves in the nothingness. That's what, as long as we are not comfortable, it's going to keep, we say testing, but it's just what Caesar would say. Abraham Hicks says contrast is shown so that we make a choice, a rocket of desire goes through, right? We desire something different. If you don't have like for me, abusive mother, you won't have a rocket of desire, I'm going to leave her and go to the United States, right? The contrast is shown for a reason. It's not a test. It's helping you evolve to make another choice. It's helping your consciousness to make. That's the evolutionary impulse. And all of you, it's an honor and a privilege, have made this choice to be on the spiritual path. We can all be unconscious. We can keep repeating our unconscious patterns, right? I can keep beating people up. I can keep yelling at people. I can keep repeating my mother's patterns, but to learn to be a different person.
So I have a question to everybody on the panel. Did you have the same question in you that you felt at some point in your life, that things are testing you constantly? And when that question stopped, like what stage is it still in you, or it was like years ago, or maybe just recently, that question would not show up. It almost, when I saw that question, I said, I didn't feel anything. Like that question was completely not my question. So I was trying to break it down, but at this stage of my life, that would not be the question that I would ask, because I feel like it's not a test. It's just a journey, and it's full of blessings at this point. So.
Caesar, you want to answer that? Ken wants to answer.
Sure. I think the question she's referring to is the $64,000 question is, what is this all about? Why are we here? What is our purpose? Where do we go when we die? What is life? What is this? Answers to life, I guess. And, we do say the why don't matter. But that is the question I think all of us have. It's just a pulling of our souls to seek out what this is all for, our purpose. Why are we here? I think everybody has that within them, and the soul is constantly leaning for the manifested form of you, for the human part of you, not the soul, because the soul already knows. It's the mental construct that is being triggered to see clearly and have a knowing, an absolute, which we may or may not ever, come to know on the level of mind, because we have all the answers within our soul. We're born with it, and we are part of it. We're not separate from it. So I think, going through the rigors of life as we, get into our teenage years and then beyond, we have the ups and downs like everybody has. And at some point, the question just becomes the ultimate for you to seek that answer. Like, it's usually through the passing of loved ones that, multiple usually, that people start to say, okay, what is that? At least that was my journey's question, what brought me to the precipice of wanting to know and having to know. And so it led me to seek, just like I think it's in every one of us, at what stage of our lives do we, ask and figure it out? Do we ever really truly figure it out on the level of mind? Probably not. We may think we know. But if you just allow things to be as they are, there's no need to know, because you are a part of it. So I like the way Eckhart ends the power of now. How do you know when you've, when you get it, when you no longer have to answer the question, you no longer have to ask the question. And I think that's relevant in answering the questions that you seek. The soul, the soul is always leading us, to the path of least resistance for our, greater selves, for our well-being. And through these lessons or tests that we're talking about, I think it's always a push in that direction of that ultimate space, the ultimate, the beingness. Like he says too, we're not human doings, we're human beings. There's nothing to do. Just be, that's enough. And allow things to be as they are. There's no need to try to figure things out as far as why. When you have this allowing, this pure acceptance, this power of presence that, we so strongly discuss. And it's the reason we're here, to understand the power of presence. And truly all the answers lie within the power of presence. It's all right there. All the answers we seek are already within. Another favorite one from Eckhart is, if Jesus came down today, there isn't anything he could actually teach you. He would only simply be reminding you of what we have forgotten in that sense. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar. The question at the end of the Power of Now, I actually had tears like flow the first couple of times I read it, because the question is, how will I know that I have surrendered? And he ends it with, when you no longer have that question. And right? Tears, the moment you know you have that degree of presence power, that you don't have the question, how will I surrender? You no longer need to ask that question. That's when you know that you've surrendered. Beautiful. Thank you, Caesar, for that reminder. Ken, you were going to say something, and then I have a question starting with April, because it's about Nada's soul contracts that she asked during group meditation.
Yes, I only be a couple of minutes. To me, we get the polar opposites. And it's something where I feel like all the answers to all the questions, or all the work we have to do is the actual work that we're doing. And so I have no doubt that I came into this life, was born into the family, and had to go through everything I went through. And so I always have choices. And it's something where I'm learning where I was, and all the things that I'm understanding it's being in presence, it's surrendering. And when I do that, I don't have a charge. It's like I just have this inner knowing. And ultimately, I'm here to be in alignment to love. And that there is something that when and there's more and more things that I'm having these breakthroughs and realizing that that's all I have to do. And so, and Caesar said so many things that I want to say also. So anyway, I'm good with that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
So for everyone, I'll try and explain and be concise. Okay, so here was a question that Nada had during group meditation, April. She said, can you bring it up on the Facebook Live Q&A? And she describes this professor of hers that was extremely kind and gentle and was very supportive of Nada. Nada has moved from Syria to Canada, right? So in Canada, she was very supportive. So, you know, you're like a immigrant, and now the world is arising. The universe is arising in the form of this professor. And she said there were a couple of people that were older that helped her the same way. And she was asking the question, what is the soul contract of this person? Because this person, towards the later, after a few years, went through like some kind of terminal illness, or diagnosed with a terminal illness, and chose euthanasia, right? Chose to be euthanized. So she moved to Belgium to pass away. And Nada couldn't understand the soul contract that this professor had with her, right? So if you want to go into what was the soul, what is that soul teaching us in that moment? Thank you.
So this professor was in Canada or was in
Canada. When she moved to Canada and she was going to school, the professor actually took care of her kids so that she could go take her tests and complete her coursework.
Okay.
So it helped her a lot, right?
Okay. So just to wrap up, Patricia, I want to wrap up your question real quick. Okay. When did all of us know? When did we stop asking why? It's really different for everybody. Everybody has different times. For Caesar, it was the many deaths. That is one big trigger. For me, it was when I stopped, or when I learned that I had infinite worth. So for me, that's my big thing. That's the thing I teach everywhere I go, every person, every day, all workshops. You have infinite worth. When I realized that I had infinite worth and that I didn't deserve to be punished, we're going to use the word punish instead of test. I did something bad, not only in this lifetime, but so many other lifetimes. I must have been a mass murderer or something. I must have deserved this. I'm being facetious on purpose. That's when I learned, that's when I stopped saying, when I learned that I had infinite worth, that's when I stopped thinking that these were tests. And then when I realized, and I think all of this is part of it for everybody, is that when I realized that these were not necessarily tests in the mind frame, like Kelly was saying, or Caesar, that we put them, they are tests. And I don't want to pose that, you know, I'm the spiritual person and I don't have tests and I just fly through them like with, you know, no, it's la la la. No, they suck. They suck. Some of them are hard, but when you realize that it's being presented for you to learn and grow, then you do what everybody said and you start practicing more acceptance quicker, faster, easier. Okay. So in the, we can call it the Matrix, but you know, I've watched the Matrix, and the Matrix, while they say it's a documentary, it is in a sense, but it's much more dynamic than that movie could ever be. Each person has a soul group, a soul cluster that we stay with. So again, you people were my neighbors in another lifetime, or we all worked in the village together, or we all did something. So you always stay in this dynamic. And well, this just came to me right now. Before we come here, we decide what we're going to do in this lifetime, what kind of our main mission is, or main missions are going to be. And each soul says, okay, I'll play this role so that you can learn to, like I had some aunts in my life, and these are the people that are the reasons that I made it through my life. For example, my brother didn't necessarily make it because I had these extra supports. So these aunts were souls that were on the other side that said, well, we're going to step in and we're going to tell you that you're so cute and smart, so that you get that from somewhere, right? That's their role. Then I'm going to get somebody else that's going to come in and they're going to do something that's not so nice. They're going to test me. And that's their role. So we have all these roles. And this is spread out and played in different roles in each lifetime. So, but what just came to me was, we set this up before we come here, but new souls are being born. So when we sleep at night, we go and make new agreements for new souls, Kelly. That just came to me like, because we say we leave our body. Well, new souls are coming in and out all the time because there has to be a balance. People can't always stay here. There has to be a balance. Everything is about balance, right? Everything's, so somebody has to be born and somebody has to leave. So this professor would have come into this person's life, most likely would have been in their past lives, and would have come in as a main support person, as a person to say, okay, we're going to show some unconditional love for this person. You're going to be of a completely different culture, but I'm going to take you in as if you're my own. I'm going to show you unconditional love, give you time. But then when it also comes to leaving, for one, the soul's, its time would have been its time. And instead of going through all these treatments and this medicine, it said, you know what, I'm just going to leave. That makes Nada have to face accepting death, instead of, almost in a way, when we do, I'm not telling anybody to do anything, but when we do the chemo and the this and this, in a way, we're not really accepting it. I'm not, again, telling anybody not to do it, but this professor said, you know what, it's my time. I'm just going to accept it. It is it. I'm not going to fight it. Not going to get 6 years of chemo and lose all my hair. So it's a huge act of acceptance, which is an example for this person. It's a lesson for her to see. So that person would have played many roles for her, would have played, helped in many lessons. So this is my input on it. Other people can add on, or I could go on, but I'll let other people add on to it.
So would you say that that soul, if it had a chronic illness or terminal illness and did not, what Eckhart calls consciously suffer the illness till the end? Because that's what Eckhart says, right? Like you have to use your pain and use your physical suffering and consciously suffer, and that will help you evolve in your consciousness. Use that illness as your spiritual evolution, right?
Not for everybody, not necessarily. And also you have to remember that the soul is always speaking to the person. So if the soul said, nope, it's not time, it's time to fight, or if the person had any fears of death, fears of where they were going to go, they would fight going. But if you were already evolved, you would just peacefully accept it is my time. You would know it's my time. I don't know that I agree that you have to necessarily suffer to evolve. Yes, we do suffer. That does cause us to evolve. But if you are already there, you wouldn't need more suffering to die. To get that last at the end where they say, do you ask for Jesus to be your savior at the end? You don't have to wait till then. So I would assume in this scenario that the person was already evolved, was already accepting of where they were going to go, or they probably would have fought the death.
So it shows that that person evolved in their consciousness to that extent that they were detached from their body. They were okay with letting go of their body and saying, okay, I'll let go. So it shows one part of the soul contract would be that to show the detachment. And the other would be the impermanence of form, right? Like Nada and her family are getting attached to this person, and then that person gets taken away. So it's showing the soul contract she has with that person is a lesson in permanence of form.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons. There's many, but also the unconditional love, the acceptance. And one of the things that we forget many times is the bad people, if you want to call them bad, in our life. A lot of times they give us examples of how not to be, but the good people give us examples of how to be. So that is an example of how to be. It's the same concept of Jesus coming down loving everybody. Well, this professor came down and loved everybody. Same example, just different form.
Perfect. Thank you so much, April. Incredible. Kelly, did you want to say something, add something to what April said? Thank you.
Sure. It's always a fun topic. So first of all, our body is a reflection of our soul. Our body is made out of stardust. It incorporates molecular structures inside of it, in the molecular bonds and how we're made that exist in our sun. So there's this misconception that abandoning our body is part of the spiritual process, that looking down on the body as something less or needing to be disassociated from or detached from is a misconception. Because all of the information that we get from spirit has to come through our body first. Literally, where is your heart? It's in your body. Your nervous system is in your body. This is how we feel all of what we feel before it ever gets up here and before our ego can ever do anything with it. The concept of death is also generally greatly misunderstood and misrepresented and misspoken about profoundly, because it is just a transition from one reality to the other. When we sleep, we experience this other reality. We go places when we sleep. Sometimes we have vivid dreams about these places that we go. We acquire connection and lessons and learnings in these other spaces. There are multiple dimensions of reality and not just this limited puppet show with all these strings attached, pulling us this way and that. There is so much more going on than what our limited five senses ever tell us. This is why being present with ourselves is so important. This is why being able to feel is so important. And this is why also regarding every aspect, loving every aspect of yourself, including your body, including everything that you feel, is so important. And this is why being emotionally present with yourself is so important, because all of the lessons and all of the information about all of the lessons and the refinement of your awareness comes through your body. We're energy first. We're spirit first. We're connected. We are soul first. And then we have this impression, the weight of our soul pushing into the third dimension to give itself an opportunity to express its information and its learning process, and to interact with others, and to provide support for everyone else's learning process, whether or not it's through a supportive role or an antagonistic role, a traumatic role, or some other drama type role. When a person chooses to actively participate with their awareness and face an illusion like death, and I do say it's an illusion because we are all conditioned to view certain things in this illusion as terrible and traumatic. So when we have so much emotional energy put onto something, you can immediately understand that it is an illusion. So creation is immortal. Creation is eternal. Spirit, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, is eternal. It hasn't gone anywhere. It expresses itself in many different ways. And we have a very strong misconception about the process of death and or dying and or passing on and or stepping across thresholds of dimensional reality based on limited 3D functionality or perception that keeps us guessing, because our ego attachment to these things keeps us spinning conceptually, spinning mentally. When someone chooses to actively participate, actively choose, instead of let things happen, when someone chooses to face death on their own terms, they are challenging their own limited perception of how they can live their life, how they can actively choose by surrendering to the reality that this moment is upon them, that their physical reality has gotten to a point where their physical three-dimensional transition is that close. Then you have to accept that there is another way to look at this type of transition. So this type of active participation is something that is frowned upon, and you have to sort of, remember, we live in a world of illusion where actively participating and being present is not something that the illusion wants. So what happens is that the illusion creates all of these constraints, restraints, or barriers to perceiving that we can actually be present, and in being present, actively participate with our soul awareness of our journey. So this is a different level of understanding participating in life. It is not just, go out, do the job, white picket fence, kids, pets, stuff like that. That is what the illusion wants you to be stuck in. The illusion and your ego and your shadow do not want you to understand that you can actively participate by opening up to being present. You can actively participate in understanding how to control your active participation, how to actively control your soul's expression by allowing yourself to feel the depth of information in your body, and to choose to not be a victim of the illusion by letting things happen. So active participation is about being present, is about being emotionally responsible and accepting and allowing what is happening, and to make a choice that you feel, and especially choosing to face something that there is so much fear around. The whole concept of dying with dignity is something that in the Western world is actually fairly new, because it's been conditioned into us that if you choose to pass on prematurely, say, commit suicide, then you're going to hell. Choosing to actively participate. And again, this is the thing, when our soul's timing hits a certain threshold, certain things will happen in our growth. This is why we have these quote unquote tests. And this is why we have so much resistance to accepting the learning experience that is being presented to us. So this is why we also have a resistance to see how we can actively participate with spirit, with our own soul level of awareness, in accepting and allowing what is happening, what our soul journey actually is. And for someone to come along, and this professor to come along and to support this type of active participation, is an absolutely beautiful moment to recognize and to witness and to understand as being a very conscious, very loving, very supportive in spirit, in love moment, so that this woman could go and choose to end her life with dignity. So this is multiple aspects of active participation happening in this event, so that people can see the concept of death as something different, that you can see it as something that is not to be haphazardly, just let it happen, but that you can actively participate in choosing how you wish to have your soul express that moment of transition. My 2 cents.
My state, Kelly, is the state of Dr. Kevorkian,
Right.
who it's illegal. It's still illegal. We don't get to choose. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate up here in Canada, and we are a very multicultural country, but there, again, the powers that be, the politicians, the old patriarchal system that we're in, the very Rockefeller allopathic Western medicine model does not sort of have any room for anything that might actually challenge the authority of the medical paradigm.
Do you guys know who Kevorkian is? Kevorkian is a suicide doctor. He assisted people in passing who were severely chronically ill with disease, no prognosis to continue to live. It's actually, he's from the state that me and Caesar live in. So I'm very aware of this concept of this professor going to this, but apparently went to this other place to make their own choice. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, April. Caesar, one of the things I remember that Sadhguru said, and Caesar, you can speak to this, is he said if a young person passes away, like with gunshot wounds, he was explaining what is paranormal activity, right? And what he says was the life force has to dwindle. Like our body getting old and passing away is the life force weakening and weakening and weakening and weakening. And he says that body has more of a chance of like making the transition into the other realm and finding another body. The paranormal activity is somebody whose life force has not weakened. So the illness was given to me, it feels like the illness was given to this person to weaken their body, right? So that the life force would weaken. So Cesar, you want to speak to this, please? Thank you.
Sure, and I kind of missed the general question, but I'll speak on that of what you just spoke.
April, actually, before you speak, April, can you explain that to him so that he gives a proper, complete answer? You'd be in a better position to explain. Thank you.
So a member of the panel of the meditation group she came to Canada to live from another country. The professor there basically took her in and helped her as she went to school, helped her take care of her children. And then the professor became ill and chose to go to Belgium to where she could, instead of going through like chemo and all of that, she could take her life. And the member wanted to know what was the connection between like past lives and what was the lessons, and also still kind of having a hard time understanding why somebody would choose to just go and take their life instead of, letting course, take its turn.
Thank you, April. So far and few in between. I think when the human experiences great pain and suffering is terminal, something like that, I guess could be in order, obviously. I could understand it as far as the the paranormal side of things is what Poonam spoke on, and the light force dying down, diminishing slowly. I can relate to that a little bit in that, the energy of somebody in their teenage years who was taken tragically, let's say, would indeed have a more powerful light force at that point, less time to diminish. So yeah, the revolution back into this realm of form would be a little more predominant than not, someone who has lived a quote unquote long life, 80. But if you think about it, 80 and 90 years isn't a very long time, compared to, I don't know what lives really long, a sea turtle or a whale or something, that of, hundreds of years. Our lifetime is really a blink of an eye, and when we are on the other side, so to speak, this time here is literally like a blink of an eye while we're away, before our return. As for the one making the decision to, end this life, again, my mom was in a kind of a similar state. So my sister had the, I guess, I don't know, pleasure of, she was a evening news producer here, and she interviewed Jack. So she got to know Jack Kevorkian on a personal level for years and years and years. And when he was going through his court battle, it's kind of interesting, but he really did have a compassionate view and really believed in what he was doing was, a compassionate thing. And so in his eyes, it was, wasn't wrong for him to do. He really believed he was helping families, and their miseries and stuff like that, where other views looked at it as, they dubbed him Dr. Death. So, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with all this. However, yeah, so when somebody's life gets taken early with a strong life force, that would be pretty predominant in things that would show up as being paranormal activities, they would call it, I guess, in that you will have, encounters in a particular location with electricity. I know that the spirits with strong life forces do affect electricity. Computers, lights, most often lights, TVs will flicker. And they're always picked up on equipment that can monitor, activity, heat, movement, stuff like this. So they know it's there. They just don't know what to call it. Paranormal activity. But so I'll just end there because I think I'm just rambling on here at this point. But what happens with it after? With the life, with the soul, are you talking about, Patricia?
Yeah, with that paranormal activity after, it does its flickering or whatever, how long does it stay here? Is it forever now here stuck?
No, I don't believe it is. I think it's a short time until the realization. I think when that happens, I think the attachment to this form is so great and unknowing that it is lingering until eventually it realizes and is pulled back into the unmanifested where it really actually dwells, but it doesn't know that the soul really isn't in the form anymore, and it wants to be because of the great attachment to it. So it does not linger for long. But what is long? A year sometimes. April would probably touch on this a little bit.
What Sadhguru said was, if it is somebody young, like 20 years old, or like with full life force and they were shot, right? Gunshot wound, or maybe had an accident. He said it would, just to explain it, he said in our timeline, it would be 40 years before that life force would weaken enough that it would return. So they are in limbo. They are almost like in limbo, in between worlds. And that's why mediums and can experience them much more than, they're more available to mediums to grasp the energy field.
Beautiful.
And they can read them.
Yeah, beautifully explained. Absolutely perfect. Yeah, because the force, the energy, if Kelly was still on here, he would talk about the energy of.
He's there.
What it is. Oh, hi, Kelly and Kelly. I just don't see him up there. We are energy after all. And when the form goes, we are still all that, remains pure energy at that point, pure consciousness, which is pure energy. And being, like you said, so young and tragic, it's very powerful at that end. And so that makes perfect sense about the dwindling down, going through the process, as if we would say. Yeah, that was beautifully explained, Poonam. Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar. Michelle, did you want to say something about this? Or anything?
Oh, no, this is totally out of my wheelhouse. I will revert to those that know more, but it's fascinating. So I'm enjoying the conversation.
Thank you. To me, after listening to Sadhguru about that if your body is still functioning well and your soul left the body, right, it's still going to not return to the other realm. It'll be in limbo. So my thing is I might as well weaken my body, right? Whether it's whatever illness or what have you, old age, get old and weaken the body, pass away. So it's a controversial, this question of being able to take your own life, whether it's suicide, like we've had this conversation, I think on the Q&A, that some people commit suicide as well, right? Even on euthanasia. So is it right to commit suicide? And I think what Eckhart and Sadhguru would say is die to the ego first. That is a stripping away of all that is not you, right?
Yeah, I think I read and listen to a lot of Ram Dass, right? And he had a stroke in his 70s. And for him, he recognized it as a blessing, because in that disability, he saw that his beingness was able to shine through, right? And so he wasn't so attached to his body anymore. I mean, he had a lot of ego. You know, he came from a very, you know, like we all do, but like he really struggled with all of his conditioning through years, even through, you know, when his time was in India. And he was teaching and everything, but when he had the stroke and and he had to depend on people to take care of his body, you know, it was a softening, right? And the beingness came through the form much more, and he surrendered to it. So there was grace there, right? I think there's the book. I haven't read all his books, but I think there's he says it. There was grace in that, and he even says that his guru was the one that you know brought it on to him. So you know, so that he could continue to evolve.
And the energy that stays, does it dwell like geographically in the same place? But because I just thought about all those wars, you know, so many wars with young men, you know, it were full body, very young, you know, some of them teenagers fighting, and so many dead. You know, that must be very intense.
No, Patricia, you're looking at it you're looking at it from the narrow perspective. Okay, so this is a very like heavy topic, lengthy topic. It may be something that maybe we should address next week when we got more time, but you're looking at the soldier from this little tiny perspective, but the soul is as expansive as God. It's as expansive as the millions of galaxies universe. So it's not necessarily that it stays in one location, this is so hard to grasp, and I'm not saying I get it fully. I think Kelly gets it way more than I will ever get it. But it's also not that this person is in one dimension or one timeline okay. So do they tend to stay around family members? Yes. Do they tend to stay around loved ones? Yes, because loved ones need that light to flicker. They need that radio to pop on so that they can keep going and knowing, hey, we're still here, it's okay. But they don't necessarily be stuck to Germany or stuck to America, right? It's much more expensive than that.
The reason why I said that, because I went to visit concentration camp. This is like quick, I'm gonna tell it. And when I went into those barracks, it's been since war. It was probably like 60 years after that I visited. And I was getting so sick. So I don't know if it was just my thoughts that were making that they were still there, you know.
Part of it's that, and everybody that goes there has those thoughts. So it almost becomes like a vortex, is what it is. That's the best way I can think of to explain it real quick. Almost comes like a vortex where it holds that. Plus everybody's thoughts that go there are so negative, right?
You can feel that in the World Trade Center as well. When I visited World Trade Center in 2005, it was gutted out. I mean, now they have that beautiful building, right? But it was gutted out, and you could see the top of the subway that's running below, right? And you can feel that heaviness even at the World Trade Center.
That same I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just saying I felt the same thing in Jerusalem. The heaviness of all the thousands of war. I mean, you know, rebuilding the city over and over again. And I was surprised at feeling that way when I went into the city. I didn't expect to feel that way. But energetically, the same thing when you walk on the beaches of Normandy. I think anywhere that you've had these massive casualties and death, but I think true, it's everybody's energy that's going into those places, right? Just compounds it. I'm sorry, Poonam, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. I was almost finishing about the World Trade Center. Ken, did you want to say something about this topic or anything? Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Patricia.
I'm just going to I'll be quick with this. Just listen to everybody. I don't have I've been through different experiences, different things with death and whatnot. And I'm amazed on how I feel when I went through different deaths and different energy fields growing up. And that's part of my whole learning, and how heavy it was and how I felt. And now there's so much acceptance, and I take death so much differently. But I know I had to go through some of the experiences in order to make that shift. And I've had different readings where, give you an example, my son would come through and he's around his mother all the time. She dreams of him, she speaks of him, and he's already told me, he says, Dad, I'm really so happy that you're talking to Ma, because she really needs you, because you understand her probably more than anybody else. And she just doesn't understand. So there's things like that, and I understand that. And then I've been in cemeteries, or I've been also different countries or whatnot, and I can feel the heaviness. So it's amazing on how the different energies that we do feel, and there is something about that. And so I'm really enjoying listening to so many of the people talking. It's like reinforcing and solidifying a lot of things that I'm understanding, but putting it in a much more depth and in the way it's explained. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Caesar, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that just briefly. April started to touch on it. When we enter into these geographical locations where there has been, many deaths, and we enter into the areas with thought, kind of leading the way, you will most definitely feel that of which you were already, hold within your mind as being this heaviness, because that's, it was a sad event, for sure. However, I've been to a couple locations as well over time, and the first half, when I went and entered with thought, it was very heavy. Trade centers being one. If you enter into these areas without thought, zero thought, it's a much different vibe. I've experienced the heaviness, and I've also experienced a very calm peace when I entered without thought leading me. So I just wanted to say that. It'd be a good topic for next week.
Mhm. Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you, Caesar. Marla, did you want to say something about this topic? And I'll let Patricia wrap up.
I'm not sure I have anything to add here. No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you, though, for opening up the topic.
Thank you, Marla. We should thank Nada for the creativity, right? She's the one that asked the question. Patricia, did you want to say something more?
Just very grateful, and thank you everyone for answering. That was amazing and wonderful. Yes, and have a good night, everyone. It was
Thank
incredible.
you. Thank you, Patricia. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Nothing? Okay. Okay, this was incredible. Thank you so much, everyone. Eternally grateful. Many blessings. Thank you for showing up and staying for so long. I know it's getting late for the East Coasters. So super grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much love. Bye. Good night.